Hello, I'm Paul from Paul Ranson Art. Welcome back to the studio. If ever you've seen a picture or a painting that you've fallen in love with, then you'll know exactly how I felt about this painting. It's Indian Summer, originally by Bob Ross, and from the Joy of Painting series, Book 21, number 9. I just fell in love with the colours, golds and oranges and that lovely blue sky, and I thought, time to do it for you. I featured this brush in this painting extensively. It's an oval 1-inch brush, and if you're having trouble painting trees and bushes, then this is the brush for you. My other half Terry described it as the sort of brush that if you dipped it in paint and threw it at a canvas, it would paint a tree for you. And well, she's almost right. So sit back, a nice cup of tea or a cold drink, and watch me paint Indian Summer. Happy painting, people. My canvas for today's painting is 16 inches by 20, and it's one of my paper practice canvases. First thing I want to do is use this, some black gesso. I want to actually colour the lower portion and the right hand side using a piece of sponge. I want to just stipple on some of this black. This is a great way of creating some depth and atmosphere in your painting before you start adding colour. To help me position my gesso properly, I put on a few little markers. It keeps me on track, and this is useful so you don't fill in too much. Here, I think I need to move across a little bit more. It doesn't take long to do, and I've left a few more holes towards the centre of my painting. Then I leave it to dry completely. Perfect, ready for some oil paint. The brushes for today's painting are these. A Bob Ross 1-inch brush, a nice one and an old one. The old one I'll use for the liquid clear on the black, and the nicer brush for the more delicate liquid white in the sky. A fan brush and a liner brush. Of course, a Bob Ross palette knife, and my feature brush, a 1-inch oval brush. Here's my can of Bob Ross liquid clear oil paint. This is the paint I'm going to be using over the black gesso to prepare my canvas. In the sky, I'll be using some of this Bob Ross liquid white oil paint. If you want to know more about using these products, I'll leave some links in the description down below. For ease of use, I store a small amount in these airtight containers. Apply the liquid clear very thinly. It's important not to get on too much, just a thin, even coat. In the sky, I'm going to be using the other brush. And again, a thin coat. I use my fingertips to test how much I've got on there. I even let some of this white drift into some of the gesso. That's it, just about enough. If you're painting along with me, my palette for today is titanium white, some Prussian blue, some black, Van Dyke brown, dark sienna, alizarin crimson, sap green, cad yellow, Indian yellow, ochre and red. My first colour to mix is Prussian blue, some black and dark sienna. This will give me a lovely forest green. Here's the colour I've made, and as you can see, a deep green colour. I'm going to use this over the black gesso. This is a very transparent green, so it's not easy to see. I'll dip my finger in it and have a look. No, much too oily. Apply a little bit more. And test it again. There we go. Perfect. I've applied the colour all over the black gesso, but I want a little colour for my sky. So with the other 1-inch brush with the liquid white on it, I pick up the smallest amount of Prussian blue and even a touch of my background green colour. I want these two colours to sort of meet and shake hands, and I don't mind if it gets a little misty and murky around the edges. I need some background trees, and for this I'm going to carry on with that nice brush. I'm going to take a small amount of Van Dyke brown and a little bit of my green forest colour, just a small amount, and tap it well through the bristles of the brush. Now tap that brush on the canvas and make some nice tree shapes. No strong colour and no detail. These are very far away in our painting. Time to use our Bob Ross 1-inch oval brush. I'm going to go into a very small amount of cad yellow, maybe just a hint of sap green, don't make it too lime, and even a touch of ochre. And just press your brush into the paint, just as before. I want just a small amount of colour to play with. Add a little hint of this colour to your background trees. Stop and reload occasionally and vary your colours. A little more ochre, a little more sap green. Lots and lots of variety. Build up your trees in layers. Leave a little shadow here and there. For tree trunks, I'm going to go into some dark sienna with a little drop of odourless thinners. Make your paint thin like ink. Then hold your brush well back and use just your fingers to gently paint some tree trunks. You notice I use the very point of my brush and I let the brush wiggle and jiggle. I do what I call stop-start branches, so it looks like the branches grow in and out of the foliage. Keep these distant branches and trees very, very faint. Just a suggestion is all we need. Let's use our oval brush to add some stronger colours. I'll use alizarin crimson with some Indian yellow, even a touch of bright red. I want some nice fiery orangey yellow colours. Give the brush a little push to load it well. And let's see, maybe we'll add some bushes in here to the midground. The stronger colour pushes the distant trees further back in our painting. It's all about playing with light and dark and shadows. I'm going to build up more and more bushes, and I'll change my colours as I go. Now and then it's a good idea to stop and give your brush a bit of a dry clean. It can get clogged up and stop working. I switch back to my nice 1-inch brush. I want to mix up some faint colours for my right hand side. I need what's called some filler foliage, in other words some background trees that are just sitting back in the shadows. So I'm tapping into a very small amount of colour, nothing too bright or bold, and I just want to tap in the suggestion of a few trees. Time for some big fir trees. I'm going to use the fan brush to underpaint them, and then I'm going to use the 1-inch oval brush to add those highlights. Load your fan brush well with that dark forest green colour. Make sure you do the edges and the corners. I like to start out by marking the centre line of my tree. Position it carefully and allow some room for some more fir trees. Reload your fan brush and hold it on one corner, handle slightly tipped down. These are what we call downy evergreens. Their branches droop as opposed to standing up. I'm going to start off by doing the centre line first. Just a few taps, just fill in some of the main area of foliage. Once you've added these, you can go back over it and widen it slightly. My top tip when painting fir trees is take your time. Bob painted them in lightning speed for TV, but you don't have to. Do it slowly, step by step. For my tree trunks, I'm going to use a little dark sienna and some titanium white. Don't overmix it, leave it marbled. Then, with a small roll of paint on the edge of your knife, just touch here and there. Leave a few gaps. I'll be putting some highlights on these fir trees, and some of this trunk will disappear. I'm going to use my oval brush and various mixtures of reds and yellows for my fir trees. Don't over brighten your fir trees. We'll add some sparklers later on, but a little touch of white really gives your colours a bit of a pop. The light in my painting is coming from the left, so that's the side with the brightest highlights. Just touch gently. Reload frequently. Again, take your time. Build up the highlights slowly. Think about eating a lovely meal. Painting is a bit like that. Savour each and every brushstroke. If you enjoy my tutorials and you want to support my channel, give me a little like, that's the thumbs up. You can also subscribe, ring the little bell and tick the all option. That way you'll get notified when I list a new video. If you want to go a little further, you can even buy me a coffee. The link's down below and I spend all the money on more supplies. Thank you. Now to add a few sparklers. Think of them as movie stars. You don't want too many, they'll all end up fighting. Just a few to catch your eye. Now back to the bushes in the foreground. But I'm going to make a mistake. I'm deliberately going to overdo a little patch and show you how I fix it. There you go. Just a bit too much there, I think. If it's just a small spot repair, use your fan brush and some of the original dark green colour. You only need to just stipple over it, redarken it, and then re-highlight it. If there's a larger patch to be repaired, then scrape off the highlights a little bit. Remember, the highlights are thin and oily and stick well to dark colours, which are firm and dry. Notice how I let my highlights get progressively darker as I work away from the centre of the painting. This draws your eye back into the middle of the scene. My painting becomes a feast for the eyes. Time to add a big tree to my painting. This is a focal point, again, to direct your eyes to the centre of the painting and frames the distant view. I like to mark the centre line of my tree with the end of my palette knife and then scrape out the excess paint. It makes putting the trunk in a lot easier. This tree looks a bit too skinny. It needs to be wider. Next, I'm going to block in the trunk using some Van Dyke Brown and my palette knife. Pick up rolls of paint and imagine you're just spreading butter on a very, very thin piece of toast. We want some texture. It'll make it easier for highlighting. For my highlights, I'm using more dark sienna, some titanium white, even a little ochre. Don't overmix them. They just turn into a flat caramel brown colour. Leave them very marbled and use small rolls of paint on the edge of the knife. Once again, start on that left hand side and just touch the knife to the painting. The sticky dark Van Dyke Brown will take the colour from the knife easily. I like to give my tree a little character. I imagine the bark's got a bit of a twist in it. Build up the highlights. And again, take your time. For the centre of my tree, I sneak a little bit of that purple colour in that I used on the ground beneath. It's useful to use colours from other parts of the painting rather than try and mix new values. The whole scene becomes far more harmonious. Now for some sparklers. Again, a slightly brighter colour. I use some of my cad yellow, Indian yellow and white mixture for this. I just want the side of my tree to really sing. But what's this? It looks like an owl has made a nest in my tree. Let's give him a front door mat. Well, just a bit of highlight instead. And just like that, you've created a feature in the tree trunk. On the shadow side of my tree, I've mixed up some blue and white. This is what's called referred light. It's light that bounces back from something else in the painting, like the trees and the bushes and the ground. If you look carefully, Mother Nature has referred light everywhere. Now for some branches. I take my liner brush and a little bit of thinned Van Dyke brown. This is an old fir tree that's lost all its lower limbs, so they have that distinctive downward, outward droop to them. I finish them off with a little touch of highlight. I'll finish off with a few more of these little low-growing plants and bushes, maybe a few little grasses catching the sunlight, and some scratchy sticks and twigs. So here's the finished painting. Indian Summer, a classic Bob Ross painting, complete with a home for Hoot. But don't go anywhere, there's another lovely painting coming right along. Happy painting, people!